Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today because this is very exciting. We have the long list for the 2025 National Book Award for Fiction. This is a prize I am particularly interested in because they went through a phase where they had a lot of sort of wacky and quirky books that were kind of out there, and over the years, they have settled into being a really good book prize for diversity and a book prize that is very good at striking a balance between books that are sort of expected to be on the list and books that are new to you. And I love a long list or a best of list as a tool for discovery. So having these books and authors that are not so familiar to me mixed in with ones that are is always really fun for me. And this, at first glance, seems like a very strong long list. I have a couple of books that I really don't know much about. So as we work our way through the descriptions of the long listed titles, I'll be getting my first impressions of them. I love to go through and see which books from a long list I might want to read. I'm not someone who usually reads an entire long list, but I like to sort of pick and choose the ones I'm interested in, maybe different from the ones that you're interested in. It's all good. And this is not a way of intending to review these books. It's just finding ones that I am interested in and maybe challenging whether or not I am interested in reading something that I had previously passed over. Now, before we get started, I'll note that I also did a video about the long list for the translated literature prize, because that came into play. There are some nonfiction books on there, and I'll link that video down below. I will also have a link to the National Book Foundation's website, first for this page, so you can peruse it yourself if you would like, and also a link to the page where you can register to watch the National Book Awards ceremony. So we will get the shortlist or the finalists on Tuesday, October 7th. The winners will be announced on Wednesday, November 19th. It's usually a very fun ceremony. They have a host because there are a couple of different categories. They have lifetime achievement medals and celebrations. This year, they'll be going to Roxane Gay and George Saunders. So it's usually a fun time. I try to watch every year when I can. So if you want to, the link will be down below. And I will also have links to all of these books on bookshop.org. There are 3, maybe 4 that have not been released in the United States yet. So those would be pre-order links. If this video inspires you to purchase any of these books, you can use that link. It's to bookshop.org. Or you can just follow that link to get more information about a title that sounds interesting to you. It will have like the full description of the book. I used the sort of narrative that the National Book Foundation created on their website when I did the translated literature long list, and I think I'm just going to do that again here. So if you want more information, you can use those links. If you want to purchase them, you can also use those links. Or if you have a favorite independent bookstore, you can support them by getting the book through them or your local library, which is always a good thing to support. And there are some notes about the books and the long-listed authors before we get into the books themselves. Here is what they say. The 2025 Fiction Long List features 2 debut novels and 1 story collection among the 10 titles. Another thing I like about the National Book Award is it's not afraid of short story collections. There's only 1 this year, but it is a major book prize that doesn't shy away from short story collections, and I appreciate that. 8 authors on this year's fiction long list have been previously honored by the National Book Foundation. Joy Williams was a finalist for the National Book Award for Fiction in 1974 for State of Grace. Rabi Alameddine was a finalist for the National Book Award for Fiction in 2014 for An Unnecessary Woman. We'll talk about that one when we get to it. Susan Choi was the winner of the National Book Award for Fiction in 2019 for Trust Exercise. Angela Flournoy was a finalist for the National Book Award for Fiction in 2015 for The Turner House, as well as a 2015 5 Under 35 honoree. I always think it's interesting because the 5 Under 35 honorees have a way of coming back as nominees later. And if I had more time, I would love to do a better job tracking the 5 Under 35 honorees and which ones release a book in a year. So it would be a little easier to maybe predict the long list for the National Book Award, but that would be a project if I had a lot more time. Anyway, Jonas Hassan Khemiri was a finalist for the National Book Award for Translated Literature in 2020 for The Family Clause, translated from the Swedish by Alice Menzies. Megan Majumdar was a longlister for the National Book Award for Fiction in 2020 for A Burning. Karen Russell was a 2009 535 honoree. There we are again. And Brian Washington was a 2019 535 honoree. So 3 previous 535 honorees on this year's long list. It's just something to watch. And let's start diving in. The first book is Flashlight by Susan Choi. You already know it's here because I referenced Susan Choi, who again won the National Book Award for her book Trust Exercise. And this is under the category, 2 of this year's titles grapple with parental loss, coming of age, and the push and pull of memory and history. Spanning decades, continents, and continuously shifting between points of view, Flashlight follows the life of a woman whose father mysteriously disappeared one night by the sea when she was 10 years old. That catastrophe echoes through Louisa's adulthood in Susan Choi's latest novel, which examines geopolitics and the family secrets that can irrevocably change our lives. This is on the long list for the Booker Prize. I won't really be surprised if it's not on the short list for the Booker Prize. There's usually a bit of a crossover between the Booker Prize and the National Book Award, which is kind of interesting and funny because they happen at roughly the same time. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Usually, I thought it was interesting last year because James felt like something of a front runner for both. He ended up not winning the Booker Prize, but did end up winning the National Book Award. So Shuggy Bane by Douglas Stewart was a finalist for both and ended up winning the Booker, but not the National Book Award. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing to track, and I feel like Flashlight is a book we could easily see on both shortlists when they come around. Haven't read it yet. I have it, but I have the book, and I also have access to the audio, so I may catch up to this one. Then, fatherhood reverberates in multi-generational timelines in Kevin Moffat's debut novel, Only Son, when a man discovers his late father's travel journal 25 years after his death. The narrator decides to take his own son on a road trip to retrace his father's steps in an intimate journey that transforms his relationships with his son, the memory of his father, and his own self-identity. That sounds interesting. This is one of the books that I had not heard about before, and that description of it makes me want to seek out more information. So I'm going to be following the link to bookshop.org after I finish filming this video and seeing if this is one that I might want to check my library, if it's something I might want to get myself a copy of. And it sounds like something that I would be interested in. Continuing the theme of healing from parental trauma, 2 2025 longlisters explore mother-son relationships. Rabi Alameddin's The True Story of Raja the Gullible and His Mother. I love that title. Tells the tale of a Lebanese family across 6 decades from the Lebanese Civil War to the COVID-19 pandemic with humor and heartbreak. A gay 63-year-old high school philosophy teacher who shares an apartment with his prying mother, Raja enthusiastically accepts when he is offered a fully funded writing fellowship in the U.S., only to later realize that the opportunity would force him to confront the very secrets he'd thought he'd left behind. That also sounds really interesting. I hadn't known anything about the book, and it sounds very interesting. I did have a mixed experience with Rabi Alameddin's last book, the one that was a finalist before, and I'm forgetting the name, so I'm scrolling back. It was An Unnecessary Woman. Actually, no, that's not the one that I read. I don't remember the name of the one that I read, but it sounded really good. I got a copy, and I got about 75 pages into it and wasn't feeling too into it, so I returned it and sort of left it there. So part of me does have a little bit of hesitation with diving into another Rabi Alameddin book, but this sounds so interesting and I love the title that I'm willing to try again. So this is definitely one that I will be seeking out where I can find it. If my library has a copy, that'll be great. Otherwise, I'll just see where I can find it. In Tokyo, Palaver's unnamed narrator works as an English tutor and spends the evenings with his friends and their neighborhood at their neighborhood's gay bar. Estranged from his family in Texas, he is surprised to find his mother on his doorstep weeks before Christmas. Together again, mother and son share meals and conversations spanning decades and borders, from Houston to Jamaica to Japan, as they struggle to understand and ultimately forgive one another in Brian Washington's latest novel. I read Brian Washington's first book that was published. I think it was called Lot. It was a story collection. I didn't really like it all that much. And because I didn't really like it all that much, I have always held off on any of his other books that he has published. And now I am starting to think I should probably dip back in and try again and see, because I feel like one of my problems with Lot was that it kind of felt like a lot of stories that were probably written for like an MFA program. And not that I want to use that as a derogative, but that's the feeling that I got. And there was promise in the writing. So I should go see if that promise has ultimately been realized, especially since his later works have been very critically acclaimed and have been recommended to me as well. And it's an important part of this process as well, challenging your previous perceptions of an author. So Rabi Alameddine and Brian Washington are both authors that I have had mixed experiences with in the past, but would be willing to try again. And that paid off really well with Ann Patchett for me. I had sort of written her off when I read Run and hated it. But when I read Tom Lake, she's now an author that I'm kind of obsessed with. So it's one of the reasons I like paying attention to long lists and best of lists. It kind of helps you evolve as a reader as writers evolve as writers. 2025 fiction longlisters consider human-driven environmental destruction through folklore, dystopia, and historical events. Across the 11 stories in The Pelican Child, readers meet twin sister heiresses compelled to commit a violent crime, the ghost of a man intent on visiting the childhood home of the late Susan Sontag, and the Pelican Child, who lives with the Slavic folklore character Baba Yaga. Joy Williams' story collection presents us with a cast of characters determined to make sense of the people and world around them, while simultaneously wreaking real and imagined harm. Now, this is one of the books that is not currently out, so it would be a pre-order link down below. I have not read a Joy Williams book, but when I was looking up those links to put down below, I happened to catch a quote from Kirkus Reviews, and it made me immediately think, oh, not only do I need to read this book when it's released, I need to go back and read other Joy Williams books. So they have a whole blurb, but then it ends, superb and yet more evidence that Williams should be next in line for the Nobel Prize in Literature. And it's a starred review. I have pretty good consistency with Kirkus Reviews. So, but that's like, should be next in line for the Nobel Prize in Literature. How have I not read her yet? So I need to fix that as soon as possible. And hopefully I will do that. I did see a quick reference on Instagram this morning. Matthew Sharapa, who has read Joy Williams, had recommended The Quick and the Dead. So maybe that's one that I'll seek out as well. In A Guardian and a Thief, a family has secured coveted climate visas to the United States, but on the day of their flight, they wake to discover their passports have been stolen. Set over the course of 1 week in a near-future Kolkata devastated by food insecurity and climate change, Megha Majumdar's novel tells the story of two families asking just how far we might be willing to go to protect those we love. This is a book that was already on my radar. It is already a finalist for the Kirkus Prize, even though it has not been published yet. And I included it in my video about upcoming book releases for the rest of 2025. I'll have that linked down below if you'd like to check that video out. I've also had a copy of A Burning since it was published, and I have not read it yet. And every time I do a book I'll revisit, people tell me you should catch up to that book. And this is a good reminder that I should do that. Although I do think I will be more likely to end up reading A Guardian and a Thief before I catch up to A Burning. And that's just probably the way it's going to go. Now we're going to jump to Karen Russell. Before I start reading what they said, Karen Russell is really interesting because her debut novel, Swamplandia, was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize in that controversial year in which there was no winner. I talk about that at great length in a video for my Pulitzer Prize project. I'll link it down below because the fact that there were 3 finalists but no winner is wild. So I have read Swamplandia, and I read her subsequent short story collection, Vampires in the Lemon Grove. I have not caught up to Karen Russell since, and this might be a good reminder, especially since I have a copy of the book that they're going to talk about. Karen Russell's The Antidote is set in a Dust Bowl era fictional Nebraska town on the brink of collapse, bracing against the forces of the Great Depression, weather catastrophes, and the community's violent histories with indigenous people and the land. A prairie witch offers the town's residents a solution to their worries by safeguarding their darkest secrets in her own body. But a question remains: how long can we avoid the truths of our past and of harm caused? It sounds really interesting. And one thing that is particularly interesting when it comes to things like the National Book Award longlist is which books from earlier in the year stay with the jury enough that they make a sort of comeback at the end. This was published in early March of 2025. And although there are several books that have not even been published yet, this appears to be one that has been brought back. And it'll be interesting to see if it has legs with, say, the New York Times Book Review's Best Books of the Year when we get that, and so on and so forth. In North Sun, or The Voyage of the Whale Ship Esther, the crew of the Esther sets out in 1878 with 2 purported goals: to embark on a whaling journey in the waning days of the industry, and to find a ship and its captain before they're lost to sea. This seafaring saga by Ethan Rutherford follows a ragtag crew led by Arnold Lovejoy. As the true purpose of their journey comes to light, the cast of characters must scrutinize their own environmental destruction, contend with the unnecessary deaths of humans and animals alike, and consider the lives they've left behind on solid land. That sounds really interesting. That's another one that I'm going to have to check out a little more closely because it sounds very fascinating. All right, we have 2 more books. We're running right through this list. In 2 long-listed novels, timelines span decades as characters grow together and apart through interconnected storylines. The Wilderness follows a group of 5 millennial Black women over the course of their 20-year friendship. Angela Flournoy captures the quintet from young adulthood to midlife as they navigate personal loss, seek community in their quickly gentrifying cities, and attempt to balance careers, romantic relationships, and motherhood alongside their friendship. Now, I forgot to mention this, I think, but A Guardian and a Thief by Megha Majumdar is a finalist for the Kirkus Prize, and The Wilderness is also a finalist for the Kirkus Prize. And this is another one that has not been released yet. I included it on my list of upcoming releases as well, so you can find both of those books in that video down below. I'm a big fan of the Turner House. I read it and loved it before I had a BookTube channel. So until this year, I haven't had a whole lot of reason to talk about it, but I love that book. I've been waiting to see what Angela Flournoy would do next. I'm so excited to read this book and find out, especially since it feels like she's getting the acclaim that I thought she should have gotten for the Turner House. I'm just glad that she's getting it now, and I cannot wait to read The Wilderness. All right. Jonas Hassan Khemiri's family epic spans half a century and revolves around the lives of the Mikula sisters, the daughters of a Tunisian carpet seller and a Swedish father who abandoned them when they were young. Their story is narrated from afar by Jonas, the son of a Swedish mother and a Tunisian father, who helps the siblings break free of the curse that has threatened them from birth in The Sisters. Okay. Another book on the long list that sounds really interesting. There are no real duds here. Like, if I was ranking these books, I feel like the one I would be least likely to get to, this is interesting because it's one I actually have, would be Flashlight. But I feel like I have to because it's also on the Booker Prize, and I do feel like there's a Pulitzer connection, or a Pulitzer possibility here, like a big possibility for the Pulitzer next year. And I forgot to mention that at the top of the video. Basically, over the last 2 years, there's been a National Book Award connection to the ultimate winner of the Pulitzer Prize. It's very hard to find things that could be an indicator of the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, but the only indication that Night Watch by Jane Ann Phillips was coming was that it was on the long list for the National Book Award for fiction that year. Then last year, James ultimately won the National Book Award for fiction. So that is rare. having something that wins both the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize, it really only happens in the case of a book that is undeniable, like James. But also the last time it happened was Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, another book that was just felt undeniable in the year. So it doesn't happen all that often, but the fact that they both had a really big National Book Award connection has instantly put all of these books on my list of books to watch for the Pulitzer Prize. And I am particularly thinking of Flashlight. Maybe I'm just being hopeful about The Wilderness. You know, Karen Russell has been in the mix before for the Pulitzer, and it'll be interesting to see any of the others. Like Brian Washington has been sort of simmering as well, so maybe this will be the book that causes a lot of recognition for him. It'll be interesting to see. So those are the books, and just a reminder about the jury for this year. The chair is Rumaan Alam. And then you have Deborah Magpie Erling, Attica Locke, Elizabeth McCracken, and Cody Morrison. Can't wait to see what books make the shortlist. I think I want to read this list. Maybe if I don't have any more luck with the Booker Prize, maybe I'll just switch to this list and work on this one. I'd love to hear what you think of this list. I am going to do a separate thing where I talk about what I think could have been on this list, things that I'm surprised about, what didn't make it. But I'd love to hear what you are surprised about with this list and what you might be rooting for if you're rooting for anything. Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.